I think the big takeaway is just seeing this picture of generosity and patience. So patience for myself needing to learn that, but also seeing just being floored by the generosity of others, family and friends and artists and the volunteers who gave their time. I think that's what I was so blown away by.
Again, I walk away from this now and I feel like I've learned all about the different departments, what they do. I've learned about that so much more than I ever knew. So going into anything in the future, I I just am so lucky. I'm so lucky to have gotten to experience this.
All right. Well, thank you
Cool.
so much for taking the time to chat with me about Forevergreen, and congratulations on the film.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
For my first question, I ultimately find the artistic
Yeah.
process fascinating, as I'm sure many like-minded cinema lovers and people aspiring to pursue work inside the industry do as well. This is why I'd love to start off by
Mhm.
asking you both about the moment you discovered how profound and impactful animation can be as an art form.
Gosh, um, I think very early on, when I was, 10 or 11, I remember uh, playing with stop motion, fiddling around with my father's video camera, broke that because I kept pushing start stop with those little old tape, cameras. And I remember being very impacted by the magic of those little characters that I created coming to life on this little desk. And um, just being fascinated with how it was able to make me laugh. And ever since then, I would just had that bug, that itch, that whatever I had to scratch and I had to pursue, and so I think I always knew just instinctually after that there was something very special about this medium. And so, but fast forward to later, and as of course learning Pixar, Disney, all these Aardman, all these studios that I've always loved seeing films come from, um, and of course them being able to move you, as I grew up. And so, I since a very young age, I knew I wanted to be an animator. As soon as I knew it was a job, I was like, that's what I want. So I think, yeah, I think that's when. And then, of course, once we did Forevergreen, I think there was a very deep and personal connection to that, spiritual connection or faith-based connection. And so I think that was another part that, felt like a great, again, great art form and craft to be able to express those things. And so any film, as you know, has the ability, it basically is the culmination of so many disciplines in one medium, where you've got incredible music and visuals and, colors and so many different art forms colliding. And so it can be a very um, powerful craft, powerful medium to convey certain truths and to move people. So, anyways, I learned early on, didn't quite understand it, but now as I've grown, of course, seeing the power of storytelling through film.
So basically when I was a kid is kind of when I first really got bitten by the animation bug. There was I believe it was Beauty and the Beast was really that was the pivotal moment for me. I had watched, lots of Disney animated cartoons, Mickey Mouse cartoons, and then I think it was when I saw Beauty and the Beast and I saw the way that the Beast was moving. After it just the energy behind the lines, that made up that character. Um, After that movie got over, I like acted out like the Beast. We had the staircase in our house and I would run up and down it. And I just, I think I even put a cape on. I think I was like that. But I was thinking about the movement and the way that like the weight, when I put my front paw down and I was just I had made that connection between um somebody drew that, and so I found out who that somebody was, Glenn Keane. So he was a huge inspiration for me. So yeah, just kind of all of that kind of led to this. I think that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the genesis of a project like Forevergreen was an interesting process as well. It's abundant in every single frame of the film that this is a passion project, and so much hard work and dedication went into every unflinching moment. I'd love to ask you where
Mhm.
the idea for the film first sprouted and about the moment you ultimately discovered that you wanted to tell such a story.
Jeremy and I always wanted to do something with, of course, entertainment and appeal and things that we're so used to. But we also wanted to tell a story with a deeper message, something that had eternal weight and purpose, something that was true, timeless, but also, like I said, could resonate with everyone, but also have this personal message of hope behind it. And so, as I mentioned, there was a season where I had felt very hopeless, and I think we've all, at one point or another in our lives, have felt maybe a sense of hopelessness, or maybe even a sense of being ashamed for the wrong things that we've done. And I think that that was very true of what happened with me during that season in 2016. And so, and I know that Jeremy has had a similar experience, but I mean, for me personally, that really became the catalyst for wanting to tell a story about hope and redemption. And so, anyways, but even though this is at its heart, it's a parental story, but it's also a story to Jeremy and I, at least, of what God had intended for our lives. And so, of course, it depicts a bear, that makes some bad choices and wanders away. And for Jeremy and I, we see ourselves as that knucklehead bear. and so, but even in the darkest of times, that there is a God who would desire to have a relationship with us, that he would stretch across an infinite chasm to save us, and to provide that hope for our lives. And so I think that was the genesis, the inspiration of it. It was essentially is loosely based off the prodigal son story, if you're familiar with that, from the Bible. And so Jeremy and I are Christian guys, and so we, as a sort of desire to tell that story, of that story of hope that we see through Christ, and what happened on the cross, like that to us is our personal connection in. Um, and but not everyone on our crew felt that same way, or maybe it came from a different background, and so, but it was really neat to see how so many people had seen just exactly how they attached themselves to the project, what inspiration or what story really resonated with them. In fact, we had heard an amazing story after someone had seen it in Annecy, where it was one of the second festivals we got into, which is a wonderful animation festival. If people don't know about it, but this gal had said just how she was an adopted um, uh, Chinese American gal who had adopted parents and never knew her bio parents. And so that was something that she had wrestled with. And she said she saw Forevergreen, and it had so impacted her that she realized that family wasn't just biology, but it was also the people who had loved you and nurtured you and cared for you, and have spent so much time sacrificing for you. And so that she walked away after Forevergreen having this deeper appreciation for her adoptive parents and not wanting to take them for granted. And so that's just the power of storytelling, though, right? And I think that while we have something very specific in our minds, there will be people that take certain things away. And so our crew was just incredible, and they also had whatever, maybe it was the craft, or they had their own prodigal, that they wouldn't they would absolutely die for and sacrifice for, even though maybe they had wandered away, or mistreated someone or whatever. So it was really neat seeing how people gravitated to the project and all saw their own thing. But at least for Jeremy and I, that was the beginning of what we wanted to say with it.
Going back almost 6 years ago now, when this started. So Nathan, he and I, we had spent a lot of time, just getting lunch together and kind of connecting week to week, whatever. And this one lunch we had, I had just come back from having, we had a new baby, so our fourth child. And I came back to work, and I had taken a little bit of time off, and we were just kind of catching up. And so he kind of shared with me some stuff that he was working on, and he had been working on this other project. It was involving a tree for a while, using kind of the same thing of this kind of co-op program at Disney to do it, grabbing different friends to come in and help work on it. And I had actually helped a little bit with that version of a tree story. And he said, "Hey, what if you directed it with me and you could help me kind of I'm a little stuck with the story. I can't figure out this stuff, and my expertise is I'm a story artist at Disney." And so yeah, so I just kind of took some time. Well, first of all, I said yes. I said that sounds great. We could make this thing together, just the two of us. You could do the animation, I could do the story. Um, let's do something together. Let's try something new like this. And so I went off for about 2 weeks and just researched different trees. I was trying to wrap my head around the story that he had been working on, and it was very, very different. It was about the tree was, I'm trying to think if it was like a cypress tree, or it was a very small tree actually. It wasn't a cypress. And there was a wood carver involved, and but it was not like a wood carved short at all. It was just about kind of wood, being in the woods and getting cut down and what that means as a tree and all that kind of stuff. And so so I looked at that. I kind of did a pass on that version of the story. And then but as I was researching trees, and we had always looked for kind of this allegorical, we're both Christians, that it's like how could we share our faith, in a very wonderful way that's through a great story. And so I looked up in the Bible. I Googled it, obviously that's what we do these days. And it literally listed out all these verses, just verse upon verse, about nature and how God uses nature to explain himself and his love for us. And especially trees. Trees are all throughout. And so I got so inspired. And as I'm doing that, I'm also looking at images, of different trees. And I've spent a lot of time up near the Yosemite area, in big trees. I think it's Big Tree State Park, or State Wilderness. And then there's the redwoods up in upper northern California. We've spent time up there, Sequoia, all these great places, and you're out amongst these giant redwood trees, or the giant sequoias, and it's amazing. And some of them are fallen down, and you can actually get up and walk across them like it's just a monument. It's huge. And so I came across this image of a tree. I don't want to give it away too much, but it's a key image in our film actually. And I came across this image of one of these trees, and there's a waterfall and this environment in there. And I saw the inspiration for what this story could be through that one image. And I went off and basically redrew it, and I put it in, and I came up with this whole other idea of a story about a bear. I had also been so my I have a side business called Little Wood Shop, and so this is I had just finished making like 600 of these or something. I made a ton of them, and I was shipping them all over the world, and it was a very exciting time. My business is all in my free time, but it was kind of this really cool year where I had worked on just this big giant bear, and then sold a bunch. So I was in bear territory, bear land, um, when I started on Forevergreen. And so I think that's why I probably thought of the bear. So I was like, oh. but what if there's this kind of like, knucklehead, bear who's just kind of a little bit angry at all the other animals around, and he's just kind of, but you could see the love of this tree caring for this bear, even though he's kind of grumpy and mean or whatever. So that was the initial story, and so I pitched that idea. I pitched both ideas to Nathan. And when I got to that image and I won't give it away, but it's a key image in the film. When I got to that image that I had drawn of the tree with the waterfall and everything, um, Nathan just lost it. He was like, oh my goodness, you don't know what this means." And I was like, "No, I actually do," because I had gone down to his office the day before, and on his desk, he had actually drawn the same drawing. So he had drawn it that same week. And he did it in a completely different way, but it was that same idea. And it was basically, again, I can't give it away, but you'll have to watch the film to know what that is. But it was so cool. It just felt like this moment of oh my goodness, we have this thing that you know, we felt like almost the Lord had given us, to work on. So that's kind of the backstory of that very long-winded backstory.
There's a fantastic quote from the former president of Pixar, Edwin Catmull, where he states, "Collaboration is the art of working with others to create something better than you could have created alone." I understand
Hmm.
Forevergreen was a collaborative artistic effort between not just yourselves, but the talented team of over 200 artists and animators who worked on the film. I'd love to ask you what such a collaborative process meant to you on an artistic level.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I just felt like I learned so much on this project because I got to dive into every department during a production, which I'm in story, so I usually don't get to do that, even though I know people in all these other departments. But I really got to see that just the incredible talent. I was always amazed by what everyone does in all the different steps of an animated film. But boy, oh boy, I got a really up close view of just how much thought and effort and creativity. And I mean, my goodness, like there's the genius ideas that we got to witness, come out through just this project. And I think just the generosity of of our team, because it was all in their free time, that it meant so much more in a lot of ways because it was things that they were giving up to work on this to make it as special as it could be. And you asked two parts to that question. I may have answered both of them in that thing, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and then one lesson you learned through such collaboration that helped you succeed within the making of the film.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. So and I kind of felt like the fact that um the lesson that I learned would be just just being open to other people's you can come up with something you really really love, and then you present that, and then someone else goes, "Oh, that's really great. Let me take that to the next level." and and let me try, or let me try something a little different, or so the thing that I really learned is by giving the kind of the keys to the car and letting everyone have a piece that they felt like they had a little bit of ownership over, they felt like was something that they contributed to. A good example of this was in our effects department. Well, we have so many examples of this, but there was an amazing artist named Dan Lund who he came on just for a brief moment to help us. But what he gave was such a profound thing, which was our waterfall. We had been thinking for a while, what could this be made of? Everything's wooden in our world, so is it made of are we using different materials or something? That is a very stop motion thing. Are we making it look like gel, like a gelatinous glob, and we're shooting that frame to frame, going down, or are we using candle wax or something? We were thinking of all these different things. And in CG animation, you can kind of make any texture look like how you want it to look. Well, he came in and he said, "Hey, what about it being a wooden waterfall?" And he influenced, because we saw that he had put so much effort into to sharing that with us that it could be wood. And he did this great, big piece of art, had all these different ideas on it, and it became kind of this moment of let's do it. Let's do that. So now Dan has that piece in the film that he contributed. And there's so many stories like that. I mean, it's really amazing. So I would say the thing I learned just sitting back and enjoying just watching what people bring to the table and giving them that space so that hopefully that at the end of the day they feel like this is their film too.
I, gosh, yes, I think that collaboration is the heart and soul of what we do. And at any major studio, Pixar, Disney, DreamWorks, Aardman, whatever, collaboration. If you don't have that, you won't be able to make that bigger, grandiose thing that I was saying earlier, where it's the culmination of so many disciplines coming together from so many different artists. And then the trick is trying to make it look like it come from one person. But I think that yeah, collaboration is key. And you wouldn't be able to do this. I mean, Jeremy and I wouldn't have been able to do Forevergreen, make Forevergreen, if we didn't have all these generous um, artists, technicians, technologists, production management, all coming together, musicians, just to make this thing. And so, just a word on that. I mean, you're right. Forevergreen was it was an entirely donated project. So this is a passion project, and so we devoted about 5.5 years of our non-working hours time. So we still were holding down a full-time job, and it was artists from all over the United States who had contributed. And anyway, so that was incredible to see people come together under a singular vision to be able to create this project. So, and then the collaboration, of course. I mean, when you're, when you are being paid or unpaid. So the people on Forevergreen were unpaid, but even more when you're unpaid, is that we wanted to give them ownership of that. So if we had an effects artist come in and, maybe we had an idea of what, so in the world of Forevergreen, everything is wooden. And so, and it's got sort of a national parks vibe to it. So, if there are rapids and, typically we would do water simulations and things like that in CG. We gave an effects artist a challenge, and we said, well, what if you could make wooden water and wooden rapids, and some of the splash hits could be like planar curls, when and that comes up like that. And so, and when you see an artist latch on and go, oh, that would be so cool, that was an element of I want to see that exist. And so the inspiration of being excited about that was kind of the way that they were paid, in that that was the only way we can pay, is pay an inspiration and a story that was worthy of their time and attention. But they own that idea. Or someone would come to us and say, what if this could be better? What if it did, and we're like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. And that is how that happens at Disney and Pixar, is that there's always this improvisational yes and that happens. Like, you come with sort of a germ of an idea, and then you get these incredible artists that come in and say, yeah, I love that. What about this though? And everyone brings themselves to a project. And that is ultimately how a project, any kind of project, I think, gets better or becomes, as amazing as it can be. So I can't say enough good things about collaboration and it being the heartbeat of a production, especially a big production like this. When they say it takes a village, it really does. I mean, we had 200 volunteers, and everyone did a little piece. Someone may have only animated 2 shots when typically they'd be accustomed to animating maybe 20 on a production, on a feature or something. But when everyone, you have 200 people, each take 2 fingers and lift on a very heavy table, it's like the table isn't that heavy, but everyone's like, I just used my 2 fingers, it didn't really do anything. And you're like, yeah, but it did. We all did. And so, anyways, that's, yeah, collaboration key.
I would love to touch on the animation within the project as it's so different and rich from a stylistic standpoint. I understand it's an infused blend of traditional 3D techniques mixed with stylistic flourishes
Hmm.
from Jeremy's fantastic woodworking background. I'm sure throughout the
Hmm.
creative process, there were many discussions as to the specific style of the film. Was there ever a moment where you considered pursuing traditional 2D or 3D animation, and what eventually led to deciding on such a specific style for the story?
Hmm. I love it. These are great questions. So yeah, so Jeremy, he's a wood carver in his spare time. He has his own little shop that he makes wood carvings, and so he's dabbled with that for over a decade, and so he's sort of been able to come up with sort of a unique style and sort of his signature style, and so that was it was very influenced, of course. And so, like I said, before Jeremy came on, I had a tree project, so there was always a tree component. And then he came in, and we completely changed the story and restarted once he came on. And there's a cool story behind that. But, anyways, he, yeah, the tree piece of it is interesting. Um, in the Bible, there are so many different trees and important, coming from an agrarian culture when the Bible was written down and recorded, it was, you have the tree of life, you've got the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you've got men who are cursed when, if they are hung from a tree, you get that in some of the laws that Moses give. And then you see later that Jesus is nailed to a tree, and the New Testament authors even make a point to referencing that cursed is anyone who hangs from a tree. So he's the one who took on the curse for us. And so, so you have this component of tree, and then you see the tree of life back in the end of the Bible in Revelation. So there's this tree and this theme of a tree of life. You see Jesus cursing fig trees when they're not producing fruit. It's like it's all over the place. And so there's an element of trees and life cycles and things like that in nature. There's so many parables that Jesus taught that were nature based, because that was, of course, all around them, and it's all around us. And so it is a timeless way to tell a story with nature. And so that was always in the story. But then once Jeremy came on board, he could tell you the story a little bit better probably, but he always grew up in the West Coast here and had gone to a lot of those national parks. Takes his kids up there, camps, and goes up to those sequoia and redwoods and these very majestic trees. I mean, the sequoia trees are incredible. I got the opportunity to go see them just a couple of years ago, and it was like to be able to stand in these enormous trees. It was just, I mean, they're on a whole nother scale. You think, oh, big trees, and then you're in them, and it's kind of these gorgeous meadows. That's something straight out of Bambi. And then these enormous redwood trees. It's just you're kind of struck by God's creation in a way that I've never been struck by a tree before. And so there's an element of awe and majesty, of course, and things like that. And anyways, all that to say is it felt like the perfect vehicle to tell a story, a sort of a allegorical story, a spiritual allegorical story, or biblical allegorical story. But also with Jeremy's wood carving, if it also felt like a really neat way to tell an appealing story. He had already been carving these little bear characters, and so he was already kind of in a woodsy world mindset. And so when I was telling about this tree character, it was like, well, maybe we could have other little woodland creatures, around, and then eventually we whittled that down to, a bear that would grow up, and so, but what we realize is that there's really a couple, and there's two materials really in this world. There's sort of man-made sort of material that's sort of plastics and metals and things like that, and then there's the wooden material, and so there's sort of these antithetical materials that play with one another in the film, and how that unfolds, as you've already seen. But the wooden material was very important for the story because we wanted it to feel like the bear could have been carved from the tree, so that when you see the bear and the tree together, on the same frame, it would look like a great pairing, sort of in a Genesis way of, in Genesis 1, it talks about God creating man and in the image of himself, in God's image. And so there's an element of, how we come from God, that we wanted it to feel like that is the deepest relationship you could have. And then there is this barren tree. So we wanted to feel like there was a relationship, like even like a tactile relationship, that like wood and wood. And then later when the bear runs away, you'll see that the bear is sort of surrounded by this man-made material, this metals and plastics and stuff. And so instinctually you should feel, even subliminally, you should feel that this is wrong. He shouldn't be over here. He should be with the other wood character. And so, yeah, the materials were a huge component of sort of the allegory of what we're trying to say.
Yeah. Well, a few things. Um, we started out, we love stop motion animation. Obviously the Rink and Bass, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer special, all those great things of the past that we have there. Also, I think Nathan maybe mentioned this, I don't know, but we both have a connection with these projects by like Earthworm Jim and a game called The Neverhood, which we grew up playing these games and just kind of fascinated at the high level of animation in that are in the games. You get to play the characters. So one is in clay, The Neverhood's in clay, and then Earthworm Jim is it's a hand drawn animated video game. And so we had that kind of connection. We got excited about that, and then we kind of realized early on that as much as we would love to, because doing my wood carving, I've been doing this for about 10 years now, and I've been thinking about it. I've been doing drawings to kind of plan out how would I make a wooden puppet? I've thought about this for a long time, and so getting to this point with this film where we decided to make it a wood carved film, there was definitely a moment where I was like, oh, could we do this with wood pegs and joints and things like that? Um, and it became kind of about sort of our limitations because we were making this all in our free time. And we knew we could tap into all of the technology that's available. We could also tap into everyone that wanted to join us. We could tap into their strengths. We weren't sure where we could get a team pulled together that could do a stop motion film in the time that we were wanting to make it. And so I think we initially set out to do this film in a year, and it ended up taking almost it took 5.5 years. So it was really probably more limitations. I think doing if we did an original wood carving for every frame of the film, and because I make one wood carving and then I reproduce it in resin. So and then I hand paint each one. So there's a bit of experience that I had already had of making reproductions, but thinking of having to do an original for every frame, it's almost, I wouldn't say it's impossible. I just think it would take so many years of our lives to do something like that it didn't quite make sense. So that was kind of a hey, wouldn't it just be cool looking? Wouldn't it be cool if we could do an original wood carving for every frame? Um, and I think again because I had already been doing so much wood carving that I was able to bring these into Nathan's office and be like, "Hey, look at this thing I'm working on." And actually, one story was I brought in there was a bear head that I was working on, and I just brought it in to show Nathan, and he was like, "Can I borrow that?" And he ended up taking it home, and he made he had an idea, like a strike of lightning was, he's like, I think I know how we could make this wood carved stop motion kind of film. And so he went home and he did this test. I feel like he did it in a night, and maybe it took him a few more days, but I'm gonna say the next day he brought it in and he's like, check this out, and he's like toggling through a movie he had made, and he's going through frame by frame, and he was showing me this bear head, this snarling, like, open and closed mouth animation, and he was making it look like every frame was a new wood carving. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is cool. I think this could work. So that's really kind of how, and then the bigger idea, and this kind of, I think this came after the fact, but it was kind of how, how we are made in the image of God. It's kind of like this bear is also made from the tree, which is kind of a cool, subtle thing in there.
And then one element that I found that Forevergreen excels at is within its characterization. In just 15 short minutes, you were able to instill such lively personalities and poignant emotional flourishes into characters who usually aren't portrayed as being able to capture such a range, which is a bear and a tree,
Mhm.
respectively. What goes
Yeah.
into crafting such an emotional range for these characters, and how do you go about balancing the emotional highs and lows of the story?
Wow, that's good. That's a good question. So there's character design, character animation that goes into one aspect of it, and you can obviously you get the right people involved, and you can make some really delicious animation, and characters come to life. The other aspect of it is, um, in order for you to feel those things in a short amount of time, it's really hard to do. And I've been working in the story department for 18 years almost. Well, actually, it is 18. My anniversary just came up this last week. Um, so I've been here 18 years, and what we've learned and had drilled into our minds over this time is the way, like, my job is basically I'm a writer that I write with drawings. And so but our responsibility is we don't get to show our artwork off to the general audience, but we get to show our ideas off. So we get to be a part of that process of making an audience feel something. Did they feel, do they laugh? Do they cry? And there's many more emotions in between. Um, but it is one of the funnest things to just sit back in the back of a theater when the movie's playing, and I know all the secrets, but the audience doesn't hasn't seen it yet. And so I can just kind of wait for the reveal of the villain, or the joke is gonna land, and I'm just sitting there waiting, and then once it happens and the audience erupts in laughter, or maybe they're sobbing profusely, I sit back and I'm like, yes, all right, got him, so it's like a sick and twisted, I'm like puppeting the audience. No, not really. um but it is very satisfying. But the way you do that is you have to have a setup and a payoff. It's as simple as that. You have to have a clear setup, and you almost set up something again and again and again and again, so that when that payoff happens, it's really, it's very clear. Like, oh, that was there the whole time, and that's why I'm feeling this. Um, and so with this film, again, that one image that I came across, I won't give away. That, like, I knew the second that I saw that I was like, this could be the thing that gets people emotionally invested in the film. And so actually, just an early version of the film that I pitched to Nathan, it probably would have been a 6 or 7 minute film, because it could have been a much shorter film, because we were actually starting, at the bear was actually like a bear, like he wasn't a cub. And when Nathan saw that, he was like, hey, what if we had this backstory? What if we had sort of how they met? And so I think we added onto the film. It's a 12 minutes of animation. um, but you kind of needed that to really get invested in the characters. Obviously, there's probably ways we could have done it in a shorter amount of time, but I think spending that amount of time is worth it, because you really do get a chance to kind of get to know the characters, and before anything else happens. So that setup is really long. We have a very, very long setup in the film, and the payoff, I think, makes you feel something. So. What it makes you feel, I can't say, but no, I'm just kidding.
I think from a story perspective, they always say story is king. And so even though I'm from animation, Jeremy's from story, but I think if you don't have a great story, you just have a lot of beautiful animation and a mediocre story, or not a good story, right? So it really you need a great story and then great animation and lighting and all these other effects or whatever to music to all contribute to that one story. So story is paramount, and so I think you get a lot of those emotional highs and lows by the structure of the story. And the story is really just an outworking of the Brian McDonald. He's a fantastic storyteller in his own right, but also he's an educator on stories, and he talks about how armature, sort of the wire armature that holds up a stop motion figure, or people have said story spine. I actually really like armature because I love stop motion, but it really paints a more visual picture of, otherwise under the heat and intense scrutiny of peers or whatever, like just like in stop motion, that clay figure would melt, but the wire under armature would keeps it strong and sturdy so that you can, make a film with, stop motion animation and move that character around. But so that is the foundation of the whole of everything. And so, but what an armature is the outworking of your thesis. It is a proposal, it's an argument, it's a conclusion, whatever a good story has. And so, if your story doesn't have that, then you don't have a story. And a good thesis or armature will have some sort of proposition that that ours is actually at the end. It's a Bible verse that no greater love has anyone than this, that one lay down his life for his friends, right? It's got to be a proposition, and it's from John 15:13. It's from the Bible, and so, and it is something that someone should have to say, okay, prove that. It can't just be something about love. Love isn't a theme. It's better to have loved and lost than to ever than ever loved at all, or whatever. What's that saying? It's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. I think that's how it goes. Sorry, booting up still. And so, but that's a strong proposition. It's like, okay, prove that out, that where someone loves someone, then loses someone, or maybe someone who is love skeptic, or fearful of falling in love, and then realizes, wow, that here's a relationship, here's a story about how you fall in love, and then you lose that person, right? But the character is still so grateful that I fell in love, even though it's so painful to have lost that person. So and we've seen stories like this, right? And like that is a story because there was a proposition and a purpose, and you're able to articulate that through the craft of filmmaking or animation. And so, again, can't stress enough how important that is. So that's where you get your emotional highs and lows. I mean, we storyboarded the whole thing, and we found that. And Jeremy's got very expressive drawing skills, and so he went through that whole thing, and I helped storyboard here and there where I can. We had some other storyboard artists that came on and helped, but Jeremy took on the bulk of that because that is his craft and that's his trade. But him and I were writing it together. He was kind of like visualizing it through the drawings. That's how we do it. And then we cut them together and make a reel and cut, sound, music together. So Jeremy and I would, bang away at the outline and those emotional highs and lows. And we would really make that, okay, this is when this is going to happen. This is when this is going to happen. And then the animators will come in, that was almost like our script writing phase. And then once we actually had everything and timed animatic with storyboards, I mean, the emotion was already playing even back then. And so because it was a for free project, we had to do, Jeremy will talk about this, but he did really rough and loose drawings. He'd probably tie it down more, for his day job, but it was really rough and loose, and my drawings were not even close to his drawing. So it was really rough and loose. And, but when it played back to back, end to end or whatever, front to end, we were getting people who were crying from the story reel. This was, there was no lighting or animation or anything. It was a bunch of drawings, timed to music and sound effects. And so, I mean, we knew we had something when you could get people to cry at some storyboards, and so some scribbles. And so it was just about making that more beautiful and more, and then having all those, like I said, those artists and technicians coming in and doing that. The limitations, I mean, we always talked about limitations in this, as well as handcraftedness. Those are kind of the two bold words that we had over this film. And in stop motion, we wanted to feel like limited stop motion from a Rankin Bass kind of time period, or the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer special, if you don't know who Rankin Bass is. But so that was definitely an inspiration, as well as stop motion, like Aardman animation. Love Aardman. And so we wanted it to feel very tactile, but there was definitely a limitation. The conceit was that we wanted every new frame of animation to be as if it was a unique wood carving that Jeremy had whittled, out of wood. And that was very intentional, because we wanted the only two characters that we have this sort of animated texture that oscillates, and we've got so it almost looks like there's a edge boil and things like that, and it looks like there's a kind of a handcrafted feeling that the characters are sort of oscillating, because it was a new wood carving. We didn't want it to feel like bendy wood. We wanted it to be like a truth of materials that is, things that we've learned in our own craft at the studio that we're at. But then, so if you move, it can't just be a rubber, character or anything like that. It has to be a new wood carving. So we developed new techniques. Our amazing artists that develop new technology even to make this. And but with that, you get kind of a chunkier kind of animation. So we're doing what's called on 2s and 4s, where every other frame or every fourth frame would be a new pose. Occasionally, moments there was only 2 shots that had animation on 1s, and they were at very important story moments that we chose to do that. And when you see the film, whoever's out there, you can absolutely see if you can spot that. It's a challenge for everyone. But yeah, but with the limited animation, and when you see the character designs, they are also very stylized. So in order to get emotion and range from that, they're expressive, but they're very limited. And so it was pretty incredible to see, we had some amazing artists, some of the top artists around the world who worked on it, and really, brought all the articulation to the character through the digital bones and joints, and worked with the expressive shapes and the modelers and the riggers, and then the animators, of course. And so I mean, you're right. And then you have lighting that brings a whole nother color palette to it, and emotion to it, and sound, of course, the whole thing. So when you asked how you got those emotional highs and lows, like, they were very much structured within the story, but then all the artists came in there and polished it and made it way beyond anything I could have thought. And that is actually how a film gets, any film, doesn't matter where it is, Pixar, Disney, that's how we do it. So
I have 2 more quick questions
sure.
for you before I let you go. As I'm sure is the case with many audience members who have been fortunate enough to see the film thus far, I discovered it on the film festival circuit, and Forevergreen has had quite a long journey on such a circuit thus far. You've been welcomed with open arms at festivals such as Annecy, Indie Shorts, and NMAO, and I'm sure the future of the film is chock full of a variety of festival appearances for the next few months. I'd love to ask you what it's been like to share such a project with the world thus far.
Oh, goodness. It has been such a joy. We're very grateful to God for the opportunities. Every film festival we get in, it's just an answer to prayer, and we're very thankful. And so to be able to share something so deeply important to us, I think that's every filmmaker's dream. I think you, as a filmmaker, want to have something you feel is worthwhile talking about, and that you can share with other people, and hopefully that's a benefit to humanity, and it doesn't just rot your brain. And so I think that any kind of great art is sort of the aspiration of great art, is to be able to say something with a meaning and have a purpose. And that's why, we felt like this has eternal weight and purpose. And so anytime, anywhere we get to share this, or share our faith, I mean, inevitably that's kind of where it goes, is that we get to share our faith. We get to talk about what Christ has done for us. And so I think that that is a really cool thing to be able to do with this art form. So again, it doesn't matter where we go. It could be a humble private screening in a friend's house, or it could be this big grand presentation at Annecy. We love it all, and we love being able to talk to people afterwards, and it's just it prompts rich discussion, and people share things that it's just so cool to be able to do that. So I feel like the most fortunate guy ever to be able to do that, and every festival we go to has just been such a rich experience. So
Yeah, it's just been so neat to hear people's reactions all over the world. Um, I was sitting in the theater in France at Annecy, and so my wife was on one side, and there was a gal next to me, and during our film, she was just like, like she was really reacting to our film, and I was like, I was telling my wife, like, check it out, So it was really cool. But to see how a film that we don't have any dialogue in the film, it's pretty much just bare sounds and nature sounds. So it can translate it can be anywhere. And it's a very hu it's a story that I believe, and Nathan believes, we all share this story. We actually are all, when you see the film, we're all this bear character. We've all been, we can identify with this character. And I think every person on planet Earth can identify with this character. Um, and so yeah, it's been so fun. And then just with all the film festivals that are still to be announced, it's been tremendous to see all the different ones that we're going to be able to get in this year. And so we're very excited about where it could go. Um, I don't know. I feel like there's just so many options of where a film like this could end up. It'd be great if it could be able to be seen, I don't know if it's on a streaming service or something someday, but it'd be great for it to be able to be shared. And then our hope too is that a film like this could be something that you could share and then have a conversation about and go, hey, what do you think about this film? And kind of use it as a springboard for a great conversation.
And then for my last question, I'm sure that the process of crafting a film like Forevergreen over the course of the last 5 years was a richly rewarding and artistically challenging process to be sure. As I understand, you and Jeremy both worked on other Disney productions in the process of
mm,
crafting this film on your free time. Everything in
hmm
life is a learning experience, which is why I love to ask you for one specific lesson or takeaway you gained through the process of the production of Forevergreen.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a big one because I do feel like, again, I walk away from this now and I feel like I've learned all about the different departments, what they do. I've learned about that so much more than I ever knew. So going into anything in the future, I I just am so lucky. I'm so lucky to have gotten to experience this. Um, and again, like it's kind of what I talked about earlier, where just learning to let people bring themselves into, you ask them to can you do this thing? Can you work on that? And then you just sit back and you just go, yes, this is amazing. You just get to enjoy it as opposed to having a million different other ideas. Obviously, we always guided every one of these things. So it was, this should feel like this. It should have this. It should look like this. It should, but it was really the artist that brought that into it. So I think I've really walked away with just a new appreciation, um, and a new excitement to just I can't wait to see what our crew does next as well, So I mean it'd be fun to work on something all together, bring the team back together for something and just kind of repeat the whole process again. Not in our free time, that'd be crazy, but uh, it was just so fun.
oh, one. Oh man, there are so many. Um, our timing is not God's timing. Oftentimes. Um, Now that was my own personal takeaway, although there are so many takeaways that you can, and that is one major one. There were so many times during because it was a for free project, and I have to give a shout out to my wife and my children, my whole family, and I know Jeremy would want the same to say that because Jeremy and I both have loving wives with 4 children each, and so there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into making one of these in your free time. And my wife was just such a superhero, as I'm sure I know that Jeremy would be saying the same about Lisa, his wife. Julie, my wife, she was just such a rock and support, and the Forevergreen wouldn't have existed without her support and my family support. Um, so just another lesson of seeing um, the love that sticks by you even in difficult times. That was another really important lesson of just seeing the support of your loved ones and how you can the places you can go when you have that kind of support system. And I think that would extend even to the 200 volunteers. I think we always talked about we moved at the speed of people's generosity. That is how we move, moving at the speed of people's generosity. And so as people had the bandwidth and the ability, that's when the film would move. And that's why I said like it was always in God's timing, and this was when it was meant to come out. Oftentimes it was frustrating where it was like I wish that, and I'm sure my wife had wished that it had gone faster or whatever, because again, like that's a lot of time to take in your free time, and time it's being taken away from friends, loved ones, family, and trying to put into this passion project. But I think our family believed enough in the project that they did, and so we're just so happy and grateful that it got completed, and we're so happy and grateful to have worked with so many amazing artists. And so I think the big takeaway is just seeing this picture of generosity and patience. So patience for myself, needing to learn that, but also just being floored by the generosity of others, family and friends and artists and the volunteers who gave their time. I think that's what I was so blown away by. Um, and what things I learned, I don't know if it's stuff I learned. I guess just didn't realize just how generous people could be.
Right.
And yeah, so.
Well, I believe that's all the questions I have. Thank you so much again
Oh,
for taking
thank you,
time to
Mitchell.
chat with me. And if audiences who are watching or listening are interested in hearing more about the film or about future screening opportunities, where can they go to check out that information?
Yeah. So our website is forevergreenfilm.com. And on there we have our all of our social media under our bios, and then at the bottom of the page we have our Instagram for it's forevergreen underscore short underscore film on Instagram. That's where we're mainly doing all of our social posting at this point. But yeah, we put all of our announcements up on there. Anything that's new. Um, and there's going to be a lot of exciting things coming to be shared because truthfully, um, all the stuff that we've shown so far is really just about the first couple minutes of the film in that realm. So there's so much more to the film that we haven't even shown yet, and on purpose. But it would be great to. We can't wait to share it with everybody, and then hopefully when the film is available to watch, it'll all be it'll be we'll announce it as well through there.